evening. I'm Lisa Picker from Carroll County Public Library. On behalf of a Likely Story Bookstore and CCPL, it is my great pleasure to welcome you to our Books Are Essential industry panel. Our theme for this Book Lovers Week is Books Are Essential. We also think that libraries are essential. Libraries serve everyone, regardless of age, gender, race, everyone. Libraries break down barriers. Just this past month, we removed another barrier by removing our late fees. Libraries connect. We hope you all feel connected with other book lovers when you attend our events, in person or virtual. If you think libraries are essential for a healthy community, please make your voice heard by joining the Friends of Carroll County Public Library or making a donation today. We'll go ahead and add that link in the comments section. Now, tonight we are featuring a panel discussion moderated by Ted Zaleski, Director of Management and Budget for Carroll County. As you may know, Ted is an avid reader. Earlier today, Ted and I figured out that 10 years ago, we made him our first Great Reader, Great Leader. We asked him to bring one of his favorite books with him to the library so that we could make a read poster for him. How many books did Ted bring? About 50. Yes, he's an avid reader. Our panelists tonight are Skip Dye, Senior Vice President for Library Sales and Digital Strategy, and the Senior Vice President of Sales Operations, both for Penguin Random House. He is also the past president of United for Libraries, a national library advocacy group. Annette Danek is Executive Vice President for the supply chain for Penguin Random House. Annette is very active in Carroll, and she is also the chair of the Penguin Random House Book Fair. Debbie Scheller is owner of a Likely Story Bookstore, Carroll's only independent bookstore. And Andrea Berstler, Executive Director for Carroll County Public Library and past president for the Maryland Library Association. Support programs like this and join the Friends of Carroll County Public Library today. And now, Ted, take it away.
All right, books are essential. Probably all of us here would say that any year, but this is a little bit different year. So there's some interesting things for us to talk about. Lisa gave introductions for everybody. I thought before we dive into what's happening, might just go a little bit further with each of you so our audience kind of knows who you are. Now, Debbie, you own Likely Story Bookstore in Sykesville. Now, just before we came on, you were saying that you had been a nurse before you opened a bookstore. Can you just, how did that happen?
Well, I had actually stopped working in the medical field when my second son was born, and I had been staying home. He had started school. I had another child in between that, and it was time for me to do something, and I knew I wanted to stay in the community. I've been an avid reader, and my family has been an avid readers my whole life, and it was a need within the community. We did a survey prior to opening, what was the biggest need within the community of Sykesville, and in the top three was always a bookstore, and that has always been a passion of mine. So it was like, okay, well, something's telling me this is time to do it. This is where I need to do it. I wanted to be in my community. I wanted to do something I loved, and I had an extremely supportive family. My husband was all behind it, and we went forward. I went to a special bookseller school. I actually spent 2 years in research before we actually started. And it's been a wonderful experience since we started 14 years ago.
Yeah, talking about swimming upstream, opening an independent bookstore as everything else is changing.
And it was during the recession, which, people were saying, are you crazy?
Yeah.
So,
yes.
But, it's interesting. We've been watching this develop for a while now. And there are independent bookstores that are figuring out how to make it work, and yours is one of them.
Absolutely. You have to. I think in any industry, we all have to adjust. And it's, we're getting our feet wet, we're learning, and we're trying to adjust to the situation as it, happens.
I don't know, Debbie, I think you could teach some classes in that bookseller.
I'm still taking classes. This week is the annual conference for our bookseller organization through the ABA, and I'm taking classes all week.
So Annette, Lisa mentioned that you're the chair of the Penguin Random House Book Fair at Carroll Community College, which has been going on for quite a long time. I don't know how many years it's been, and a big event. A lot of people come to that. I was trying to remember, did you get it in this year? Did that happen before?
We did. We just got it in. So just right at the wire, it turned out really great. So we're going to reimagine that for this next year.
Okay, so you've already decided that it's going to be different for the
will probably be a little different. We don't know. We haven't had our first meeting yet. We've had like a little executive committee meeting, but we're having our first meeting. I think it might be next week. So we're going to put on our thinking hats and probably just, have a few different paths and alternatives.
It's an interesting connection between Random House and the whole book reading community. And Carroll County is a pretty strong book event, author event kind of place. There's any thoughts for people who have never made it out to the community college for the fair?
It is. It's a really great event. I always say it's great for parents. It's great for grandparents, and it's almost the first time that a young kid gets to go to college. And it's a gorgeous college, and it's in the atrium, and it's the natural light, and there's books. So I mean, what better combination could it be? So I always tell people it's really great, and it surprises me that there's a lot of people who still don't know about it. So we usually get about half the people who come each year don't know about it, which is kind of interesting because we've run it for almost 20 years. So anyway, so if you have never gone, you should go. We may reimagine a little bit this year, but it's really great. And we've raised so much money for scholarships over the past 20 years for that. And really, so it's really to go back into the community and create more readers. So it's a great partnership.
Right. And Skip, I was watching an interview with you.
Oh, no.
No, you did fine.
Good.
But you mentioned your role with the United for Libraries organization. I had never heard of it before. It sounds like it's kind of a bigger version of the Friends of Carroll County Public Library that Lisa was talking about.
It is.
Tell us a little bit about that.
Sure. United for Libraries is actually a division of ALA. ALA is made up of multiple divisions, and United for Libraries is one. United for Libraries used to be an organization called Friends of Library USA, and then they were then brought into ALA, I guess, around 2010, and since has been an active division there. And so we're an organization that works with advocates, and those advocates are both friends, trustees, and foundations that support libraries. And one of the roles that the United for Libraries play is around library advocacy, working with different groups to understand how to go out and promote and talk about and preach the preach, as I call it, of why a library is important to the community. And that's what this organization does. And I learned about this organization now a little over 14 years ago and have been active in this organization ever since, and sort of accumulated in me becoming the president of the organization. And as I said, my reign of terror just ended. So I now passed on the hat to a new president and have been working with them right now on advocacy. And that is my passion. So that's what I've been working on a great deal with United for Libraries. So if you're not a member of the Carroll County's Friends Group, I tell you, please join, because that is the best way to show your support for your local library.
Okay, thanks. And Andrea, you came here to Carroll County from Wycomico, a little change from the Eastern Shore to the middle of Maryland, and you followed the force of nature who preceded you, Lynn Wheeler.
Yes, Lynn is a force of nature. I'm still trying to figure out how she accomplished everything she did and got any sleep at all. But
maybe she didn't sleep. So
that is rumored.
So how long have you been here now? 2 years, 3?
It'll be 2 years in November.
2 years, okay. So so you made a big geographic change. You followed a legend, and then you walked into COVID. So how are you feeling these days?
Well, it feels like it's been a lot longer than 2 years. But I knew when I moved into Carroll County, Lynn, I had worked with Lynn on several statewide committees, including the Maryland Library Association. And so I understood the dynamics, at least in basics of what was going on in Carroll County, the incredible innovation, and the incredible love of books and stories and the reader community that was here. And when I got here, after I was here for a couple of months, it dawned on me that I knew a drop in the bucket. This is an amazing place. It is an incredible place to live. It's an incredible place to work. And the value that the community places on literacy and on reading just is overwhelming. And it's an overwhelming amount of support for the library and for the reading community in general. And we've been able to do some amazing things because people understand the value of the library. They understand the value of reading. I think it's why we're able to work so wonderfully with our partners like, Penguin Random House and A Likely Story, and feel like it's just this wonderful friendship. We're not in competition with each other. We're all working together to serve the same community of readers in different aspects of that community. So it's been great. I have truly enjoyed it.
And part of that community and the events that are going on is a lot of author interviews. Mm-hmm. I've had the opportunity now to do quite a few with Debbie and the library. And that got started. I'd been to some events, and one day after an event, I said to Lynn Wheeler, if you ever had the thought that maybe there's a chance for me to do one of these, I'd be interested. And it's not literally true, but it seemed like almost 2 days later, I'm on a stage in front of 250 people interviewing Daniel Silva.
Be careful what you ask for, Ted.
Now it's become a regular part of my life, but a part I enjoy very much.
Well, that's good. Can I ask you a question, Ted?
All right.
Who stands out as one of your favorite interviews?
Laura Lippman. Yeah, that was in Debbie's store.
Yeah, it was a great interview too, Ted. It was really good.
No, thank you. I really enjoyed talking with her, and I think she enjoyed the interview. She was looking at my working copy when she was getting ready to sign for people, and she's looking at it and said, "I feel like I ought to buy this from you." Okay, so let's look at what's going on around us now. Now, with four of you, conversation gets a little difficult sometimes. So I'll try and address this to people. But if somebody feels like they have something really compelling, go ahead and jump in. But first, I want to talk about how have you adapted? And I know it's a different answer for all of you. But maybe Annette, you could start off with your supply chain, getting things from and to every place. One thing I think it'd be good to touch on, among whatever you might want to say there, is we were talking about quarantining library books when they are returned. Now you're handling books, you're sending out more than 1 million books a day all over the world. How are you making sure that they're going out safely?
So it was really the first thing that we had to deal with COVID, right? And there's a lot of people who work in the Westminster facility. And what we did is we actually segmented people. So we have 3 different shifts and we segmented people. So in the beginning, when there wasn't a lot of advice, we just said, you know what, we're gonna make sure that the different shifts kind of don't touch each other in a sense, right? So even though people worked, they didn't work a whole shift, we paid them for the whole shift, which I thought was really great as a company. And then we had cleaning supplies. Like, you have no idea, talk about the supply chain of cleaning supplies. Thankfully, early in March, I said, do you know what? I don't really know about this, but just order a whole bunch of cleaning supplies. So thankfully we did. And that took us really through, because then they got a little bit tighter, right? So we did, we didn't go take out all of the stuff from BJ's, just so you guys know, in the community. Well, we found our suppliers. And then we got them from New York. So as the New York offices closed, we said, like, hey, send us your supplies. So really, like, just cleaning supplies, you guys know, and hand sanitizer, we just had to learn how to source that. And then at some point, masks came out and the health department came out. And then they, we actually took everything to the tougher measure, right? So they gave us a form and they said, well, you're not healthcare, so you don't have to take temperatures. And we said, no, we're going to have people, we're going to have them fill out their temperature, and we're going to go by the, whatever you would use at a hospital. Like, we are going to use that same form. So I'm really proud. Our folks really adapted and worked with us, and we just were extremely safe. And we just did an appreciation for all those people. If you know anyone who works with us, if you worked between March and May, we just did an appreciation, and we gave people an extra $2 an hour based on like hours that they worked. So I don't know if you've heard that, but we just did. No. We just did it. We called it an emergency period COVID just thank you award. So, payment award. So it was really very nice. So we knew books were going to be essential. We knew that because we studied it, and we have other facilities in China. So we knew that kids' books first and educational books were going to be really, really, really important. So we said, boy, we have got to make sure that we're able to operate, because schools are going to need us. So it was a fun ride. I can't say that it was sleepless nights and lots of work, but I mean, I just thrilled.
Well, we're not off the ride yet.
No, we're not. No, we're not.
We're not off the ride yet.
I know, but Skip.
We're on the different curves now.
We are.
We're in the small rest area.
You are right. That's right.
So Debbie, game changer for you. I mean, you kind of expect people to walk through your door and walk around your store, and all of a sudden nobody's allowed to come in, and then eventually some people can come in. So how did you work your way through? Not that we're through, how have you worked your way through so far?
Well, it was really tough in the beginning. I wasn't able to be open. I did have to lay my entire staff off. I was able to continue with online sales, which not that there really is anything positive about the pandemic. However, I've always had an online presence. I've always had a website with sales availability, but it was never utilized very well. People really didn't do it. They didn't come to it. It was massive. It was amazing, the response people did. And many people didn't realize that when all this came down, even Amazon couldn't ship. Nobody was shipping. However, if you had a bookstore that had open accounts with their publishers like Penguin Random House, I was able to order my books direct through them, and they were able to get them to me. So I was able to get those books out into people's hands. And with our partnership with the library, it was devastating for them as well. And I couldn't, rely on them. Oh, well, the library will have it, because they weren't open. So it was, a catch-22 in that I was getting new clientele. However, I was a one-man system. It was very, very difficult. I did have some my college girl came home, and she was like, I'm okay, put me, do what you can. So she did come in and help me with shipping and things like that. When we were finally able to, we did curbside, and we did local, we put the books in the car, and we did local deliveries. We weren't able to do curbside until about 2 months in. And then we were finally able to open up at the end of June to allow 50%, capacity coming through the doors. But we've been, same thing with the cleaning supplies and the masks, and we've been 100% on board with that the entire time, and still are. The local distillery, Patapsco Distillery, they converted their entire system over and started making hand sanitizers. gave it to every business on Main Street to use within their stores without a cost to us, which was extremely, generous of them. And, just working with the partnerships we have and moving forward. Now, of course, our events are a huge part of our business, as is working with our school systems. We had, I counted out, and we had 18 events that we had to cancel within that March through June period, which is devastating for everybody, including the authors. It makes publishers pushed publication dates way back. Books that were supposed to be out in April, May, June are now just coming out or even haven't been released yet. So it's been a crazy roller coaster.
Yeah, the last live event we had scheduled, last live event that happened, we were expecting, I think, about 300 people. And this was just as people were getting worried. And I think we had about 100 people show up. Okay. So it's still a good event, but not what it was going to be.
Right. And I don't know when they're coming back. I pray all the time, that this gets over with and we can move forward and go back to, having these great events. We're just, we have to take it day by day.
When Debbie talked about putting a book into the customer's hand, she literally did that, because I know when curbside was open, I one day got a book from her. I pulled up to the curb. It was raining outside, and here comes Debbie with an umbrella over her head and a book on the other hand, handed in the window to me.
Yeah.
So Skip, what kind of adaptations have you had to make?
Well, it's for us, dealing with the library marketplace and dealing with my session, it was a lot of change. One, we had ALA canceled, ALA annual, which is a big event for us in June, which allows us to actually promote our new books coming out, to actually connect authors and librarians together. So that was canceled. Before that, the Texas Library Association show was canceled, which is, though a state show, is a quite large show for us. That was also canceled. So that, with that, just making the connection about how do we connect authors and librarians together? How do we help authors and librarians discover each other, especially new books? So that's when we started having to switch a lot of our focus from being less ad driven to more actually doing webinars and actually doing these like Zoom events, which have become exceedingly successful for us. We have a Wednesday, we did all summer, every Wednesday, we did a author sort of book buzz event with different themes, etc. And in it, we would get thousands of librarians joining us. And it was a very heartwarming thing, because we would get tons of these messages back saying, thank you for helping us make the connection. The other piece of it is one big part of the shows we go to was actually working and putting books into librarians' hands through like ARCs, or advanced reading copies, or galleys. That went away. So then we had to try to figure out, how do we make that connection? Because librarians, I always say, I want to influence the influencers. And that's what librarians are, right? They make connections. And so that was a big adaptation that we had to go through on my whole library front, is rethinking, how do we make connections? How do we work with librarians? And especially through the different challenges of COVID-19, Black Lives Matter, dealing with different issues that would come along, we would have to be adaptive, understanding what are the true needs. How can we be more resourceful? How can we be more resource driven? Because that's what librarians were looking for, particularly on backlist books. We had a huge increase of our, what I call backlist, books that are in our backlist, not the new books, but books that have been out for a number of years. As I've always said, if you've not read the book, it's a new book to you. And so that's exactly what we tried to do, is like make the connections and see what are people really wanting.
Well, that's interesting that Skip is saying that, because during the shutdown, and when we were getting people were ordering online, just going and scanning and browsing our website, they were finding a lot of, I remember I wanted to read that. Our backlist sales went up, double digit went up during the shutdown, because people, and the new books weren't coming out, but people were finding classics. Classics went up double digits. So it was definitely an increase.
I was seeing so many people rereading all the Jane Austen, or reading all the books that they wanted comfort, right? They wanted to have this safe. Yeah, exactly. But we also had this huge trend. I was telling Annette, we've talked about this before. I kind of knew that sourdough was a big thing around the first week of April, because we started getting all these notes from librarians, and I'm talking about hundreds of notes from librarians about bread baking, that they were getting inundated with questions about, oh, do you have in your collection, do you have in your digital collection books on bread baking? Because a lot of libraries don't have a lot of cookbooks in a digital collection. They have it more the physical, because more people want a physical book, you know, to do stuff. So I knew sourdough was a thing. I knew about it early on that stuff, and it really got to be a good thing. So we went the whole big stuff. I had a whole big run on like planting a garden, the Victory Gardens. I had so many people asking about Victory Gardens, so many people about understanding books and all our Rodale titles that we have. It became this, and it was like constantly like, yeah, guess what? The next best thing, planting corn. Everybody wants to plant corn. So we want to know how to do that. And runner beans were a big favorite.
You know, I don't know if this was a Random House book, but I actually have a favorite bread book. It's called In Search of the Perfect Baguette.
No, it's not us.
Part memoir, part cookbook, part history of bread making in France.
Yeah.
Now, Andrea, I said to Debbie, game changer for you too. People walking in your doors, kind of a big deal for you. All of a sudden the doors are locked. You've had to make a few changes. Can you talk a little bit about how the library's been moving through to your reopening just today?
Just today, we finally got the doors back open. It was something that they certainly don't teach you in library science school. You know, amongst all the other things you don't learn when you learn to be a librarian, how to close your library in an epidemic or a pandemic is not one of them. But when we did, we basically just sat down as a leadership team and we walked through and said, this is how we're going to do. And, you know, so for the next 2 to 3 weeks, we met virtually pretty much every day or every other day, trying to figure out how we could get back open. That was, from the time we closed, the first thing we started talking about was, okay, how do we get back open? How do we start serving the customers again? Within 3 weeks, and I'm really proud to say Carroll County was one of the first libraries to do this. We had online programming going. We had the online story times happening. We were out there getting back to our youngest customers anyway. Then we came out with, in June, we came out with the contactless delivery. It's very similar to Debbie's curbside service, only the model we used was that you scheduled for when you wanted to pick your items up, and we would have them in our lobbies. And so in that 2-hour window, you could come in and pick up your bag of things. And it was all checked out. So all you had to do is walk in, pick up your bag and leave. And we're still providing that, actually. That's called express pickup. And you can do that. It's in the branch now that we're open. We've moved them inside.
I can attest that it works because I've used it a lot.
It's and people love it because it's very prompt. You know, you can go onto the catalog at 10, 11 at night, pick out the things that you want, and then when they come in, you just schedule to pick them up. So the word we continually use in the library field is that we pivoted, and we pivoted very quickly. We went from purchasing lots and lots of print material, new titles and print materials, to purchasing those same titles and digital materials. We added 5 major databases in the 6 months we've been closed, including a training database called Linda, and several research databases, and BrainFuse, which is a tutoring database that people can use, students can use. So parents who are frustrated with math or science or something can go onto BrainFuse and do that. We looked for every digital solution we could possibly find. And we realized why we were doing it. There were some people in our community that were not going to be able to reach us digitally. We understood that that was a problem we couldn't solve, but the problem we could solve was how much could we make available. And that's really what we did. We ramped that up a little more about 8 10 weeks ago, we had outreach. Our outreach services started a contactless service to the daycares that they had been servicing and some of the senior centers. We have one story where that the outreach van showed up. They left the box of books on the doorstep, which is what they were to do, and they backed away. And the resident came out and she was in tears. It was the first new title she had gotten since she had been basically locked down in COVID. And she said, this is just, I just had nothing to read. I was so, she was so glad to get something new to read. And that it's a tear-jerking story, but by the same time, when you're a reader, that's a passion. I can't imagine being locked someplace and not having something to read. So we've almost come full circle. We're open a limited amount of hours. We have a limited number of people who can come in the building, but the collections are all there. The books, the movies, the computers are all there. We don't have our in-person programming yet. So Debbie, as soon as we can get that up and running,
absolutely,
we got to do something. But the virtual programming is doing okay. Things like this, people are enjoying the fact that they can sit in their pajamas and attend a library program. So there's that too.
I agree. I've done some of them, and I've really enjoyed laying in bed and watching them. I'm the first one. I'm the first one. I'm like, I'm really getting used to this one. It's better than Netflix.
It's nice. We
totally agree.
Talking today, if you miss something, I'll just catch it later this evening. I'll watch it over the weekend because we archive almost everything that we do.
Yeah, that's
on our
great.
YouTube channel, so it's been great that way. But I am really proud of my staff. We kept pretty much everybody on board the entire time. And they took training, they started planning programs, they started, our materials department was still processing stuff, even while we were closed. We had stuff still coming in because we knew we needed some copies. And they've just been an amazing group. So, kudos to them for finally getting open today.
Andrea mentioned, I think you said buying tons of material every year. Just to give people watching some context, I don't know exactly what the number is, but when the library is buying books and CDs and the digital content, they're spending something in excess of $1 million a year. In Carroll County, it's a fairly big county, but we're not a huge place.
No, in the terms of, if you were to compare directly what we buy compared to, say, a larger county like Baltimore County or Montgomery County, it's small. But if you compare it on a per person basis, we buy a lot of titles for the 160,000 people who live in Carroll County. And we always rank among the top circulations per person across the state. And that goes back to us being a community of readers. So I'm glad we had over 1,200 new cards between March 13th and this last week. That people that found us online and said, oh, I didn't know the library had, I can get electronic books, I can download music, I can, watch streaming movies from the library with my library card.
So a little bit of a positive that came out of this.
It really is. Yeah, it really is.
Okay. Somebody can comment on this if you want. I just wanted to make note of this. When I was preparing for this, somewhere I watched a Random House commercial, and it said, we believe in the power of the book, and then we believe in the future. And it made me think, that old saying about planting a tree is an act of faith in the future. And this kind of hit me the same way. The idea of putting a book in somebody's hand is about faith in the future. Particularly when you're putting it into somebody's young hands.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely.
We've always believed. The same thing that is changing the world one book at a time. And when I go back to a library, I always say that, a library is unique in the fact that is the great equalizer. That when anybody walks into the front door of a library, they are equal at that moment. So no matter what they come into that library with and what they own, the trappings that they bring, the baggage that they may bring, when they walk through that door, all are equal. And that is something that we have to remember, that there are few institutions left in this country of ours that afford us that ability to have a place to go where we walk in and we have all the same opportunity. We have all the same equal rights to go and to explore, to dream, to aspire, to learn. That's what's so great. That's what's amazing about libraries today.
Speaking of dreaming, I know, Skip, you're in New York, right?
I am actually, as we speak, in Lewis, Delaware. I'm old, but I work out of the New York office. Okay. It's a long commute.
Right. Yeah, yeah. So you probably haven't been on Main Street, Westminster. Annette, maybe you have.
I have been in Westminster many a time.
Oh, okay. Out front of our library, we have a sculpture.
Yes.
Which is very much about kids dreaming and the role that books play.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Another one of those things that Lynn Wheeler made happen.
Yes, she did. Yes, exactly. I mean, it's one of the things that we did when we adapted. I mean, we were the first publisher on March 18th. I was very proud for PRH that we were the first publisher that basically granted open licenses for all our books, all books, adult and children, for people to actually read them aloud, either on Facebook Live, on YouTube, on a school internet channel, or et cetera. Or even, for instance, one of the things that really touches me is, because I'm involved with this program, is, through St. Jude's Hospital, they had a program where the doctors each night would read to the kids who were in their rooms because they could not leave their rooms. And actually, they were these children that actually their parents could not come visit because they were such dire shape. And so the doctors and nurses with each night would read our books, actually PRH titles, because we did this program. And it was one of the things, I got a great letter from the doctors of St. Jude's talking about why this program made a difference. And it's things like what Carroll County did when the first ones to start bringing story time out there. It's very important to make the connection, whether it be this gentleman who's a British stage actor who is reading some of our books aloud in front of his fireplace on his YouTube channel, which was great, to people like the ambassador of Lithuania, also reading to expats in Lithuania some of our kids' books. Or we had NASA did a whole program too with some of our books. So it's amazing how the books made a connection during this time of COVID.
It is. It was one of the things we were talking about before we began today, that the story, the power of story is riveting. And it's a very basic and very innate desire in people to connect to one another. You want to feel like, you want to feel unique, but you also want to feel connected. There's something unique about you as a person, but there's also something that's very, that is similar to those around you. And the sharing of story is one of the most powerful ways we do that. Even before there were books, you had oral storytellers who went from town to town and and people would compare those stories with each other. Oh yeah, did you have him tell you the one about this or the one about that? And now we have books and we have book groups. And some book groups are just, an excuse for dinner and wine, and nothing wrong with that.
Nothing wrong
with it at all. But there's the story that you talk about when you share in a book group, and your experiences and the feelings that you have as you read the story open people up to having discussions on a very intimate level that they may not otherwise have. And I think that at a time like this, when we are still so socially distanced, it's something that we need even more. So I think that's why that people have been reaching out and loving the things like you're describing, Skip, where that you can still share your stories.
Each of you has talked a little bit about things you've done to adapt to the pandemic. I'd be interested now in hearing of things that you did that were new because of this. What might continue on in the future, even though you hadn't planned for it earlier? And two things that occurred to me as we're going through. Skip mentioned the book buzz events on Zoom. And then of course there are things like this. I think this is the 4th or 5th event now I've done online instead of in person. But Debbie, why don't you start us off? What do you see maybe continuing that only happened because of the pandemic?
Well, actually, a couple things. More, in the store realm part of it, we definitely will keep our curbside delivery. Even it's just a convenience for people, even if it's post-COVID. Handicap. We've done it prior to, people would call that couldn't get into the store, and I would bring a bag of books out to them. They'd go through them, keep what they wanted. I'd bring the others back in. We've done that before, but I think it's definitely going to be something that's going to be more continuous, as well as our local delivery. We do a free local delivery, and we'll continue that as well. On a broader range, we've been doing some events with authors that probably wouldn't have toured necessarily in the US or on the East Coast, because when publishers put tours out, somebody might be going on tour, but they might end up only on the West Coast. Even though they're on tour, we might not have that opportunity that year for them. We had an event with an author. She was in London. It was, I believe it was like 11 o'clock her time, and we were having, an author conversation. Tomorrow we are having an event with, I believe she's in Scotland, one of the authors for tomorrow night, and we're doing it at 5 o'clock, so she's not up at 2 o'clock in the morning or whatever it'll be. So I think that type of thing. Some authors are really enjoying the connection. Some authors aren't as much. They much prefer, I think all of them prefer to, meet their readers in person. But I think with the authors, it gives them an opportunity to meet more readers. We also have gone online with our book chats and our book clubs, though we have moved to in the park clubs. We started doing our book clubs in the park, social distanced with our Zoom as well. Now our evening one will no longer continue in the park because obviously it's dark now in the evening. But, that was a nice change. That was something different. And, maybe in the summer we'll do that again next year, even if we're not enclosed in COVID.
Yeah, I don't know how widespread a practice this is, but Debbie mentioned bringing out a bag of books. In her store, I don't know, is it a brown bag or do you wrap them in paper? There's unidentified books. So you're going in and you're buying this package of books, not knowing what they are.
Right. It's, we all judge books by the cover, and this is a way that you don't judge that book by the cover. So we wrap it in brown paper. We put a little synopsis about the book, and you're buying it blind. And it's been extremely popular. People have really, really enjoyed it, because it would be, a lot of times their books, I am totally a judge the book by the cover reader. It's a very bad habit. But if you don't know the cover, but that the story is grabbing you, we've been doing a lot of success with that. And we take it down for a while, but everybody asked for it to be put back up. So, it'll be back up again.
That's funny, Deb, because we're actually looking at starting a service, and this sort of answers a little on Ted's question, where that we sort of have a concierge library service that we're just rolling out right now. People can fill out a form and tell us, these are the things I like to read, and it's online right now. These are the things I like to read. Could you pick out books for me? And then the librarian will go through and sort of concierge shop certain collections for you. And when they're all pulled together, you just go in and pick them up. And
we started during the COVID shutdown. That's exactly what we called it, our surprise bag of books. And you could buy different levels, and you would tell us, whether it's for children, whether it's for a YA, whether it's an adult in your genre. And depending on what level you purchased, you could get a book or 2 books or 3 books. And we would also include an ARC, as Skip had said, the advanced reader copy, because, we have so many. Not anymore, unfortunately. That's one thing that has kind of really slowed down. And I think that's something I think I'm going to miss, because I don't think a lot of the publishers are going to go back to the full strength of ARCs that they used to be at before.
Okay, so Annette, what do you see that came out of COVID that might continue in the future in your world?
So the one thing that used to always kind of drive me crazy, because if it would snow at one of our facilities, right, then like some people don't come to work, and then Debbie may not get her shipment because she didn't get it. So one of the things that we learned is that we had inventory. So we have facilities in a couple places. We have one in Westminster, which is our main. We have one in Indiana, and we now have one in Reno. So what we did is, in the past, we would have certain titles in certain places, and you would just ship them from those places, right? Well, we broke the rules. Skip knows this. We would talk a lot. We're like, all right, we're going to break the rules, and we're going to ship stuff from wherever, even though it's going to cost us more money, because we want Debbie to get her books and we want Andrea to get the books. And so I really see that kind of thinking and that mindset. And it was always very hard to cost justify having having more inventory in one place or certain technologies, because like I'm an engineer, so process, if you were to look inside the warehouse. But now I've got, hey, global pandemic is actually something that can help us with contingency planning. So we did so much contingency planning, and we were able to ship from different places. So that is definitely going to stay. And that way, if we have a snowstorm, we can get people their books. So that I'm really excited about that. And it shouldn't have taken that to get there. We kind of had those in the works, but we kind of did it and crash landed it. But it's really been great.
Yeah, this forced a lot of people, organizations to think differently and
Yep.
break out of just not thinking about it, because that's how we do it. So Andrea, one of the big changes, of course, has been doing these online events, and no getting around it. I would much rather be sitting next to the person I'm interviewing and have an audience in front of me, but I've been learning how to do this. One really good thing about this, though, is we're capturing these. The face-to-face events, they happen and then they go away. People now, even if they're not watching, like Nancy Pearl earlier today live,
Right.
pull it up tomorrow or next month, it's conceivable that one of those events could be pulling in people for years. Just somebody's Googling Nancy Pearl and runs across that.
It is true.
Have you guys given any thought to, is there still a future for this when you don't have to do it this way?
We have started talking about what would be the next iteration when we can actually be in person, when you can sit at this, on a stage with someone. And I think what we're going to wind up seeing is kind of like what Debbie was saying. We'll have some people who we wouldn't be able to get in unless we do them virtually. And so we would do a virtual one. But some of the other ones who we might be able to get in person, we may actually start looking at, do we still live stream it? Is it something we could record? Is it something we could make available at a future date? I think about, Ted, even the interviews that you've been able to do in the short time I've been here, and some of the authors that we've had in the short time I've been here. And I think, wow, wouldn't it be great if you could go back and actually watch them, again, if you were a fan. Your interview with Nancy Pearl was just so much fun today. And last night we had, Brian Frosch was in conversation with Larry Tye about his book on McCarthyism. And it was a great interview. It was a great conversation about a time in history that we don't talk about a whole lot. But then we've got the romance thing coming up, this week, and that's going to be a lot of fun. Our virtual romance convention, and people can participate online. So you're right. I think that we will always. I don't think we can get away from doing online programs, but I don't think that we will shy away from doing the in-person programs again, because there is a certain amount of energy and enthusiasm that comes from a live audience that you just really can't capture online. So I see that as staying, and a lot of the parents have told us they love our online story times because they can make them fit around nap time, and the kids can watch them again and again and again if they really. We have story times with goats and pigs and chickens and dogs, and we actually have cooking classes online now, and we have how-to classes, we have science classes, and these are all now part of our repertoire. And I just don't think that we'll be able to or we would want to lose those online customers. You know, there's actually more there. I think there's a lot more there we can do online now. Now that we're starting to learn some of the best ways to do this.
Of course, the one really hard thing to translate into online is when we have these author events and Debbie's sitting there with her piles of books. People are buying those books and then walking over to the authors and getting them signed. And especially when we do our Battle of the Books author interviews, you know, the kids getting to meet those writers, you know, it's just it's really fun getting to watch that.
Yeah, that's going to be tough. Although I think Debbie did offer, we have signed book plates.
Yes, a lot of the author events that we've been doing. In fact, I just received a whole packet from one of the romance authors for tomorrow night that they sit and they sign book plates. And so when the books come in, we'll put the book plates. So they'll get a signed book. It just won't be meeting them in person, unfortunately. And sometimes we actually have the author's full signature right in the book. For instance, we have Yaya Gassi's new book, and we have signed first editions of it. Tomorrow, Jodi Picoult's new book is coming out. We have signed copies of that as well. So, you know, we can still get the signed copies, but when we have the virtual event, it's meeting the author. You know, you get the signed book, which is, you know, precious. However, it's that actual talking to, you know, them talking to you as well, because they miss it too. They really do.
They do. The authors really enjoy meeting their readers. You know, I would say they're fans, but it's their readers. It's the people who enjoy their stories as much as they enjoy writing them.
Right.
Yeah.
So Skip, you mentioned how you had to move your book buzz to Zoom or to a webinar. Do you see a future for that when you don't have to do it that way anymore?
Well, I do. I do. I think that, I mean, as Andrea said, and Debbie, it's a unique opportunity right now. We can make a connection in a different way. So I don't think that will ever change. You know, the nice thing about these meetings like we're doing now, you actually have people in some ways more present or actually feel more connected. We've actually sort of had that feedback. It's how is orchestrated. Not always I've done these events do I have someone as prepared as you, Ted, to be able to lead the participants through these conversations. But when you do have a good host and you do have a topic that is pertinent, it can become more than just a TED Talk, which I've seen those before and stuff. And what you want to have is that connectivity. So I kind of see it evolving. And I think it's actually an exciting thing. If we talk about a bright side from it, it's actually seeing how important books are to people. People have, it kind of allowed a new vote of confidence about why the written word is important, why it's important to share the written word, why to have that experience of meeting an author. So I think it's good. It is going to change for us. I mean, the things that I've learned most about the pandemic and how we've had to change our business is that good stories prevail. You know, that's the thing. Good stories are out there. People want to actually hear about new books. They want to talk about new books. They want to share about new books. They want to laugh. They want to complain. They want to cry about new books. And that's the thing, but the new book doesn't have to be a new one that's just coming out. It can be a backlist title. It can be going back and rereading Jane Austen when I read it at 14 and thought about how amazing it would be to live in England, you know, in an old drafty house, and then going back and reading again and thinking back to when you're 14 again. Those are the things that are nice, and uniquely so, these events like this has brought us back there in a modern way, but it definitely has brought us back there.
And here's something, anybody who wants to jump in on this one, anybody think there might be a burst of first-time authors emerging from these circumstances?
We have so many first-time authors. Debut authors are, you know, every week, you know, that Tuesday comes and there's a whole bunch of debut authors. I think what you're going to see a lot of, good or bad, is a lot of self-published authors coming out of this. I think there's going to be a lot of people that have sat down and, you know, said, hey, I have a story to tell and I'm going to tell it. And I think we're going to see a lot of that coming out.
I would agree with you, Debbie. I think we're going to see that. I'm also hoping that we'll see some authors who, you know, some people who try their hand at this and find that they have a real gift. And, you know, they maybe wouldn't have done it otherwise, but they were stuck at home, you know, and they needed something to kill the time. And so they said, well, I'll just start.
Because it's so easy.
I'd much rather read. Thank you.
Right. That's why I don't write.
I'm working on my novel right now. Right. I've already written 2 chapters during this whole interview.
Well, if you do, you have to promise to let Ted interview you when you have to.
Perfect. That would be an honor. That would be an honor.
You know, Debbie mentioned self-publishing. You know, from Random House point of view, do you guys watch self-published books to say at some point, you know, we want that to be our book now?
Oh yeah. We have a lot of those. Yeah. I mean, best example is 50 Shades of Grey, right?
That's what I was going to say.
I mean, that's a great example, self-published title, which, you know, that did okay for us.
And, more than okay, I think.
Fell out of that one, right?
It was okay. It did just fine for us. But I think that what self-published authors is, you know, I hope the nice thing is there needs to be more written word, because I feel that the more people are out there writing the written word, the more people are reading, the better people can understand each other, the better conversations happen between each other. I think we become more open to communicate and more open to new ideas by people sitting down and actually writing. You know, you may not agree with everything that everybody says, and they may not know where the comma goes necessarily in a sentence, but you have to give them this. They have a passion and a dream and a story. And all of those are wonderful things that we have in this time, a pandemic, that people kind of forget that we still have our stories. And that's what's so nice.
It's important, Skip. It really is. And I'm glad you brought that up, because I think with the pandemic, but then we also have the whole sort of the racial tension piece, where that we're all trying to understand how it feels to be someone else. And one of the best ways to understand how it feels to be someone else is to read their story.
Oh, exactly.
You know, I mean, the empathy and the perspective that you gain from reading a story that is completely different than the life that you've experienced is probably one of the most powerful pieces of a well-told story. And so I think it's great that we have some wonderful stories coming out and some wonderful experiences being shared in the written word around that topic.
It is the Transcendental Kingdom. You just talked about having signed copies of Yara's book. The amazing thing about any of these stories and about our time we're in right now is that making it easier to have these conversations and connections by experiencing other people's lives and their souls through the written word is something that booksellers, oh, there it is. Yay, I love that book.
I actually it's on my list. It's on my list to read.
I love this book.
It was propping up my computer, but
it's amazing.
It is fabulous. And her first one was just.
Oh my gosh, first one's amazing.
First one, Homegoing, for those that haven't read it, Homegoing by her, amazing. We did it for book club. It was loved by everyone, and it has a fabulous story, and Transcendental Kingdom is just as beautiful.
But see, that's what libraries and bookstores do, right? What you do is you introduce to a community a story. You introduce to a community a way of life that's different than their own, and you get people to understand and empathize. You get people to understand and say, well, I may not agree, but at least I understand where you're coming from. And frankly, that is all we best can wish upon anyone, is the fact that they can go and read a story and come back with a broader understanding of the world in which they live in. And whether that may be a caterpillar that's really hungry, or it could be a family who has just moved from Somalia to the US. All of those are key elements, I think, that what bring us together. And during this time of COVID-19, right, it's this whole thing that we've made these connections now, like we're doing now, that would not have brought us together otherwise. We would not necessarily have this conversation if it had not been for COVID-19. So think about what that brought together. I got to meet Ted.
Well, and it's
another big thing with, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, Ted, with your interview with Nancy Pearl this afternoon, you were saying about reading being an escape, and I thought the answer, and I think Debbie, you had mentioned this too, that the answer that she gave about, not necessarily an escape, but an entry, that this was an entry into another world, into another life.
Right. Opening that door. Yeah.
It gives that opportunity, and this is a big plug for any of the book clubs. I don't know if the library is doing book clubs online right now, but
they are.
Yeah. So I mean, we are too. It's a huge opportunity to discuss these books, and like it or if you like the book or not, it's a wonderful conversation. Some of the best book club discussions we've had, where people had controversy over their different views of how a book came about, and they've been fabulous conversations. And I totally push the fact that people should try book clubs, because they really give you an opportunity to maybe read something that you would never have picked up otherwise.
Exactly.
Now, I was going to ask about traditional books versus digital and what's happening. I just wanted to point out, Annette actually just demonstrated one important difference. You can't prop up your computer with a digital book. So Annette, any thoughts on what we've seen happen, digital versus traditional books, because of what we're going through?
You know what? You would think the digital books were still going up. No, people still want the physical book. I mean, we are busier than ever because people want the physical book. And guess what? Like Debbie, like you said, they want the backlist book. Right. So by the way, that's in a different area of the warehouse, like that we don't always go to very often. So so we're not always designed to pick those. So talk about like fun challenges that we've had. So we have to, explain to people, well, we have to go way in this like corner to get this box that we haven't seen for a while, but great. So we're going to take all these, get all these boxes, but physical books are still selling fabulously. So it's really, and I have no judgment, physical, audio, but people love that physical book. And it's still about 80% physical, right? It's up.
It's actually risen during COVID, which is not the norm from other publishers. It's a physical business for us, which I think speaks to the work that Annette's done with her supply chain, which is that we had kept our books shipping 7 days a week during the crisis when other publishers had unfortunate events, I hate to say. So we've been very lucky in the planning, and like Annette's forethought to think, oh, I should order more Clorox wipes back in March. That'd be a good thing, So that's the stuff.
We were noticing a balancing out between the digital and physical long before COVID. The electronic was soaring, and then all of a sudden it sort of balanced out. And what we were finding was actually it was the younger generation who they had so much screen time work, and they last thing they want to do is get on a screen again. So they were going back to the print books, and this has sort of accelerated that a lot. And they just don't want to look at another screen. And I empathize at this point with them.
Well, we did a survey with Library Journal that we sponsored, and it was interesting, all the Gen Xers and Gen Zers who basically said, hands down, almost like 85% preferred a physical book over a digital, as opposed to the millennials were like equal. Interesting, you could see that it's sort of changing. And also the interesting thing is parents, people who have children who were used to be big digital readers were going back to the physical all the time. And it makes sense because they were enjoying the act of reading with their kids, and then realizing like, oh, I'm actually enjoying holding a book, smelling a book. Again, like I said, there's nothing better than going to a printer. I love it, and smelling all that ink and stuff. It's an awful thing, but I guess it's going to end my years 10 years earlier because of it. But smelling all that ink is great.
You were a Xerox smeller in the school, weren't you?
No, you were fancy. Well, Debbie, I'm not. I'm older than you. I had the blue mimeographing machine. You know that you filled in with all that blue like powder and stuff, and then you turned it. Yeah, exactly.
I suspect Lisa is going to be popping on soon to tell us we're running out of time. Want to see now if she doesn't come up, we have more we can talk about. But just in case, Debbie, is there anything you would like to talk about that hasn't come up so far?
No, I think you've done a great job, Ted. Thank you for doing this. I think it's been a great conversation and a needed conversation for everybody involved. I think it's a big thing. I can say future-wise, looking forward to maybe fourth quarter. We've been already kind of prepping for the big buzz that they're going around, and Annette, you might talk to this as well, as they're talking about supply chain shortages and get your orders in and all that. I don't know if they're doing it for the library as well, but we're trying to ramp up for that. So we're crossing our fingers that we don't have a fall down in the supply chain because of everything going on with the printers and everything.
Skip and I we talk on a daily basis several times. So we are working very hard to make sure that we keep our supply chain going.
Yeah.
Because books have been great, right? Books have been essential, right? This was the topic. Books have absolutely been essential. We knew that back in March, and we said, we're going to keep going. And wow, we were right. We were right. We're crossing our fingers. But boy, were we right. And so this is what Skip and I do in our day-to-day job, is we make sure we got to get the books because we got to get them out.
And I could put with books, puzzles are essential too. I found that out very quickly. Yes. Puzzles are very essential. And Penguin Random House has some good puzzles.
We have more coming.
Oh, good.
And they're all coming in. They're arriving over the next 4 to 5 weeks.
Awesome.
So you'll see some amazing puzzles.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great.
So, Skip, anything you'd like to talk about that hasn't come up?
Well, I just want to encourage people again to support your local library by going out and writing to your local congressperson and your state senator and your state representative about why library funding is important and that libraries are essential to your community. Right now, there's a bill in the Senate right now to get more funding for libraries. During the last funding spur that went through the HEROES Act, libraries were woefully not fully funded as well as they should have been during that time, and this new act does indeed do that. So if you want to find out more, you can go to ala.org and get more information there, and I'm sure Andrea can tell you more about that too. But I do encourage you, support your local library, join your friends group, learn about how to become a trustee, learn about all the different ways you can become involved in your library, because it will help your own community grow.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring up funding. This is going to be an interesting conversation this coming year. Maryland is going to be facing a very difficult budget situation. Now, they're a relatively small part of Carroll County Library's budget, but that's not to say it's not a meaningful part. And Carroll County is facing some big questions as well. We're going to be wrestling with what are we going to be able to do, and not that it's just about the library, but the library is going to be in the mix with everything else we have to be thinking about.
Yeah, Maryland's very unique in that state, and Carroll County is very unique too. And that really goes to the history of the Carroll County Public Library and how important the work that Lynn Wheeler did and now Andrea is doing too, and how local businesses like PRH, but also a Likely Story, has done to support the local library and school community. I mean, school librarians are at threat. That's the biggest threat in our country right now. So I do say go out and talk to people about why it's important to support your library.
So Andrea, anything you'd like to?
Well, you listen to Skip, right, Ted? Because when we come in for our budget talk, I'm gonna quote Skip on.
Skip, I'm happy. Pay taxes here.
But I also want to say that we are working really hard to make sure that we meet the customers where we can, in this time, and the in-person piece just isn't happening. But as far as programming. But we do look, in fact, we were in the process of doing a strategic plan. And so we're in the middle of COVID doing a new strategic plan, which has really kind of changed our whole perspective on strategic planning. And it's opened up a lot of opportunities for us as well. We, things that we talked about we needed to do, but we thought, that'll be a couple of years down the road. We're already up to our elbows in now. So we've accelerated an awful lot of our anticipated new stuff from years to months and weeks. We were talking about going fine free, and after 6 months of not collecting fines, we said, you know what, this is silly. We just can't do this anymore. And we looked at the budget and said, we want the stuff back. That's all we want. So some of those kind of changes that we were looking at, we just pushed them forward and said, let's do them. We don't know what the next one will be, but it's been a whirlwind month for us. The fine free piece, we're open. We rededicated the Westminster branch last week and named it the Davis Library Building. And in a couple of months, we'll be opening Exploration Commons. So I'm not sure we can handle too much more innovation at this point. But it's good things. It's positive things in the midst of a pandemic, in the midst of the issues we're facing as a country, and in the midst of an economic trial. There are good things happening here in Carroll County, and it's great to see. It's really good, positive stuff.
Yeah, I missed the rededication of the Westminster Library, but I was driving down Main Street and I saw you and Tony walking, carrying a chair, each of you carrying a chair. And I said, I wonder what they're doing. And then I realized the next day what it was.
It's online though, Ted, so you can go and
Okay.
the archive, including the tour of the construction. It's all on there.
So Lisa, do we have any questions or comments from our audience?
Well, you did a wonderful job, Ted, and all of our panelists seem to be kind of intuitive in what the audience was thinking too. A lot of the questions got answered. There is one outstanding question left, and that is from our good friend Lynn Wheeler. She says, of course, that Carroll County is extremely fortunate to have the fabulous folks here at Penguin Random House and a Likely Story Bookstore. And she knows that all of us have been very involved in the library's Battle of the Books reading competition. She would like us to talk a little bit about the impact of Battle of the Books in developing the joy of reading among young readers.
Well, oh gosh, can I start?
Oh, sure.
Okay, so Lynn knows this. Lynn knows this is a passion of mine. I did Battle of Books when I was in 6th and 7th grade in my town in the Midwest, and my team won. with my two friends. I still have my little notebook with all the books that I read. So she knows it. When you guys started the Battle of Books, I think we were one of the very first sponsors, because I just think it's a great way. What a great thing to have a competition on kids reading books and the characters. And I had a team and I coached it. I just think it is the greatest thing to do. Anyway, and maybe you could do it online too.
We are actually, the Battle of the Books team is working on that. They're working on how to hold the physical one, but we really are looking at, okay, we have to plan for this virtually, because there's just no way we can see having all of those people in a gym at the same time.
Yeah.
Circumstances. So the Battle of the Books team is already working, and Lisa, I guess I'm letting the cat out. They're already working on a virtual version of this, so that we can get back to a full-fledged battle, for next year.
And I can say in meeting with the kids, the passion that they have for this event, you are opening up a whole new realm of reading for these kids. They come in so excited. They're supplied, many people might not know, but they are supplied from the library with a bunch of books, the books for the battle for each team. But many of those kids want their own books. So they'll come into the store. We have an entire selection all year round of the Battle of the Books books for those kids. And they come in and they just can't wait to get the next one, because they learn those books. they read them over and over so that they can know them inside and out. And it's a real passion for those kids. So kudos to Lynn and the committee that brought this to Carroll County. It was, one of the best things I think that, has happened with the reading in kids in Carroll County. It's been fabulous.
Well, I think talking to your point about the Battle of the Books and why it's important and the impact is that we don't know the power in which a book can change the life in the world that a child or a teenager is living, and how that one book may make the difference and impact them for all their lives, to make them feel more accepted about who they are, to make them feel more confident about their own belief structure and to trust themselves, to make them explore new thoughts and to meet new worlds. I mean, that is one of the best ways to introduce it, that one of the powers of this program that you do is not only the competition, the fun stuff of having the fun and the camaraderie of it going through, but it's also the fact that actually you are changing a person's life one book at a time. And that's what's amazing.
And Skip, that was me. I wasn't really good at sports, like real sports. I tried, but I was really good at that sport. I was great at the Battle of the Book sport.
It's because we talk about, going all the way back, we talk about Carroll being a community of readers. Yeah. And what we're teaching those, I was a solo reader. Like, I would read, and I never talked to anybody about what I read. And we're teaching these students, we're not only introducing them to some great stories, but we are teaching them how amazing it is to share those stories with your friends. We're actually teaching them how to have a book group.
Well, and that happened. I had several moms that they called the store, and they were continuing their children's book clubs during shutdown, and they were doing Zoom book clubs for these 9, 10, 11-year-old kids. And I thought that was absolutely fabulous. And they, you give them recommendations, and, they eat it up. They love it. And you're building a whole new world of readers by doing that. And I think it's fabulous.
And they may not be comfortable talking about themselves, and talking about their world they're living in, but they're comfortable in talking about this whole experience of an orphan child or 3 orphan kids being adopted by a really strange uncle. And you have all these different stories that they can talk about. That's impactful. That's what makes a difference in a child's life, but also it changes a community. Right?
I've been emceeing one of our Battle of the Book events for maybe 5 years. And each year I read all the books that the kids read. And I've read some books that I really liked. And in fact, I said this earlier to Nancy Pearl just today, a book that I probably recommended to more people, not kids, but more people than any other is The War That Saved My Life, which
great book.
I read because of that. And I still remember the first time I did the Battle of the Books. It's in the gymnasium at one of the local high schools. And there were about 30 groups of elementary school kids getting ready for the competition. And I sent a text to my wife saying, it feels like before a big basketball game in here. There was the same sense of excitement and energy.
Skip, I think you need to be at one of our battles when we go back to having them live. We have Lisa, how many kids did we have last year? We had over 1,500 students in our last live battles.
Yeah, it was the last time we had live battles, it was about 1,800 kids, I think it was.
Oh my gosh.
And
awesome.
Over the course of 9 battles, of course, we had over 5,000 participants, or attendees there, cheering on the kids. So we packed gymnasiums, and we are treating reading like a sport.
That's great. It should be, indeed. You can challenge another library system in a different state now. You can do it virtually.
There you go.
Oh,
I like that. So we have to get Skip involved if we do this, right? You're gonna have MC too.
I'll happily be there to be the referee, and I'll be happy to be the MC. Well, I don't know if I would do a good a job as Ted though. What I could do is be the sidekick. I could be the that stuff, the Hardy to his Laurel or something, or the Laurel to his Hardy.
Lisa, are there any promotions you want to do?
Yes, it's as if we talked before. I actually want to give a hearty thanks to Prince George's County Memorial Library System. They have been a promotional partner for this particular event and all of our book lover events. So a shout out to them and a thanks to a fellow library. As Skip said earlier, Maryland is very unique for libraries, and we have just such a collaborative work environment here. We talk to each other all the time. We share what has worked well for us and are always giving advice to our fellow libraries across the state. And we have been sharing our virtual program that way too. So they are great friends of ours and have also been very helpful in promoting our programs for us as well. So we thank them. Also want to remind everyone that Book Lovers Week continues. Tomorrow night is going to be a toast to romance. It will be our virtual rom-con. Last year we had a rom-con and we packed that Mount Airy branch full. It was a really great event. We had a lot of romance fans there, and the authors had a wonderful time. This year, we will be having best-selling romance authors Eliza Knight, Tessa Bailey, Alexandra Belfleur, Olivia Dade, and Jenny Holiday. And they all have books coming out in the next couple months. And it's actually going to be the release of Tools of Engagement. No,
Tess Bailey.
Oh, okay. Yeah, Tools of Engagement is coming out tomorrow, and the Rebel Wears Plaid is already out. Eliza Knight's already out. Tessa Bailey's is coming out tomorrow, so we'll be celebrating that. Tune in to Facebook to watch that. And then we also have our Penguin Random House Book Buzz on Wednesday at noon. So please tune into that. Thank you all for joining us. I want to thank our panel in particular. We are lucky to be here in Maryland, but particularly to be here in Carroll County, home of Penguin Random House and the Likely Story Bookstore. Carroll County Public Library is a 4-star library, and we really are thrilled to be here with our community of readers. Have a great night, everyone. Happy reading.